The phone screen burned white in the dark bedroom. 2:14 a.m., and the baby monitor on the nightstand cast its green glow across the ceiling, a small planet orbiting nothing. Ruthie's breathing came through the speaker in soft bursts of static, that underwater sound that meant she was deep asleep, and I should have been too, except my lower back had been screaming since 4 that afternoon when she'd insisted on being carried, and only carried, and the rack did. Henderson's kitchen renovation was due Friday, and the cabinet measurements were still wrong. I was scrolling Instagram when the notification dropped. Cynthia Mercer added you to Mercer Fam Xmas. I tapped it. A group chat. Messages going back 3 weeks, all visible, stacked in that familiar cascade of green and gray bubbles. Cindy had created it on November 19th. 22 days of conversation I'd never been part of, never been meant to see. My thumb moved faster than my brain. I scrolled to the top. Cindy, November 19. Okay, so I'm thinking we do Christmas big this year. Like real big. I'll handle everything, you guys just need to chip in for food and decor. Budget $8,400. Mom, November 19. That sounds wonderful, sweetheart, but that's a lot of money. Cindy, November 19. Don't worry about it. I have a plan. I kept scrolling. The plan became clear across the next 40 messages. Cindy had told our parents that I was spending Christmas with Cole's family this year. Leah said she and Cole are doing their own thing she'd written on November 22nd. Mom's response: that's probably for the best. Less drama. Dad, a thumbs up emoji. My father's entire contribution to 3 weeks of planning his youngest daughter's exclusion was a single thumbs up emoji. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it lived in the financial thread. Cindy, December 2. Mom, can you ask Leah for another $600? The caterer needs a deposit by Friday. Tell her it's for the gutter repair or whatever. Mom, December 2, I'll call her tomorrow. Cindy, December 2, perfect. She always sends it. She's easy. She's easy. 2 words, and the room tilted. My hands went cold, fingers stiff around the phone, and the baby monitor crackled with Ruthie shifting in her crib, and I lay there in the dark with those 2 words sitting on my chest like a stone. She's easy. Like I was a vending machine. Insert excuse, receive money. I scrolled further and found more. Cindy, November 28. I told Mom to say it was for Dad's prescription copay. Leah sent $400 in like 2 hours. Laugh my ass off. Lamau. My sister had been laughing at me in text messages for 3 weeks, and I'd been sending money with exclamation points and heart emojis, and the dissonance between those 2 realities was so enormous that for a full minute I forgot how to breathe. I scrolled back through 3 weeks of messages and took 47 screenshots. Every plan, every lie, every casual reference to the woman they expected to fund a celebration she wasn't invited to. Between screenshots, the details kept landing. Cindy, November 25. Should we get the catered appetizers or homemade? Mom, Leah makes those crostini things. Oh wait, she won't be there, lol. 3 laughing emojis from Cindy. My crostini. The ones I'd brought to every family gathering for 5 years. The ones with the whipped ricotta and the honey and the fresh thyme from my garden. The ones Cindy ate 6 of at Thanksgiving last year and said, you should open a restaurant. She said that while planning my exclusion. The group chat timestamp confirmed it. November 25th was the day before Thanksgiving. She'd complimented my food at the table on Thursday and laughed about my absence on Wednesday. Further down, Cindy had posted a screenshot of my Instagram story from December 3rd, a photo of Ruthie in her reindeer onesie. Cindy's caption underneath: at least we'll get out of buying the baby a gift this year. Mom had replied with a crying, laughing emoji. My daughter. My 14-month-old daughter, and they were relieved they wouldn't have to buy her a present. The phone screen had gone blurry, and I'd blinked, and my cheeks were wet, and Ruthie's breathing still came through the monitor in its slow, underwater rhythm. And somewhere in the house, the furnace kicked on the furnace that actually worked, the furnace we'd paid for ourselves. I didn't respond. I didn't remove myself from the group. I put the phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling fan until my eyes burned. The furnace, Dad's dental work, Mom's car battery, the gutters, the prescription copays. I'd sent money for all of it. Every time, within 48 hours. No questions, because what kind of daughter interrogates her mother about a broken furnace in February? The kind who reads group chats at 2 in the morning, apparently. The kind I was becoming. Cole found me at the kitchen table the next morning, still in yesterday's clothes. Ruthie in her high chair painting herself with applesauce. I slid the phone across to him without a word. He picked it up. Read. His jaw worked the way it did when he was chewing down something he wanted to spit out. The kitchen was bright with December sun, and the coffee maker gurgled, and Ruthie babbled at a Cheerio she'd found stuck to her elbow, and everything about the morning was ordinary, except the phone in my husband's hands, which contained the proof that my family had been running a beta, 2-year con on me, while I packed their Christmas stockings and signed their birthday cards and told Cole we couldn't afford the lake cabin trip because we were tight this month. How much have you sent them? Total. I don't know yet. A lot. He set the phone down carefully like it was evidence and went back to spooning applesauce into Ruthie's mouth. She grabbed the spoon and flung it. Neither of us laughed. Mom gave Cindy the china, I said. I don't know why I started there. Maybe because the inheritance was where the pattern began, or maybe because I needed to say it out loud, the inventory of everything my family had decided I didn't deserve. The crystal. The silver serving pieces. All of Grandma's good stuff. After Grandma died, Mom distributed everything, and Cindy got the china set, the crystal wine glasses, the sterling flatware. I got the recipe binder because you're the one who actually cooks. Like that was the consolation prize. Like the recipes were less valuable because you couldn't display them in a cabinet. Where's the binder now, pantry shelf? Top. He looked at me. We'll add everything up tonight. Don't do anything yet. Cole. Don't let them know you're in that group chat. He wiped applesauce off Ruthie's cheek with his thumb, and his voice was steady, the voice he used on job sites when a subcontractor was lying to his face and he already had the receipts. That's the only advantage you have right now. He was right. I hated that he was right, because what I wanted to do was call Cindy and say every word that had been stacking up behind my teeth for 29 years. But Cole saw angles I didn't. He'd spent 10 years running a renovation crew managing subcontractors who lied about timelines and materials and square footage. He'd built a career on letting people think he didn't see what they were doing. He'd once let a plumber overbill him for 3 months before presenting the invoices to the general contractor and getting the man fired. Patience was Cole's best tool. I was learning to borrow it. That night, after Ruthie was down, the baby monitor green and pulsing on the nightstand, I opened my laptop and went through every Venmo transfer, every Zelle payment, every bank statement for the past 24 months. I made a spreadsheet. Date, amount, reason given, actual destination as far as I could now guess from the group chat. February $1.200. The furnace died. March $800. Dad's crown fell out. Insurance won't cover it. April $400. Mom's car battery, and alternator. May $350. Cindy needs help with her car insurance just this once. June $1.500. Cindy's in a tight spot with rent just this once, don't tell her I told you. August $900. The water heater is leaking. September $650. Dad's blood pressure medication, the new one, the insurance doesn't cover yet. October $600. Property tax shortfall. November $400. Dad's prescription copay. And those were only the ones over $300. There were dozens of smaller ones. 100 here, 200 there. Mom's birthday dinner, Cindy's car registration, Dad's fishing license, and new reel because he's been so down lately, and I thought it would cheer him up. 24 months. 43 separate transfers. I scrolled through the spreadsheet one more time and the dates kept snagging on my memory like fabric catching on a nail. $1 500 inches June Cindy's rent. That was the month Cole and I had skipped our anniversary dinner because I'd told him we were tight. We'd ordered pizza and eaten it on the couch while Ruthie slept. And he'd said next year, and I'd said next year, and the money was already in Cindy's account. $900 in August, the water heater. That was the week I'd turned down the Franklin project, a $15,000 kitchen redesign for a client in Williamson County because I didn't have the cash flow to front the materials. I'd referred the job to a competitor and watched her post the finished kitchen on Instagram 3 months later. My design sends her portfolio, $650 in September, Dad's blood pressure medication. That was the same week Cindy posted a photo from a spa weekend in Gatlinburg, the kind of place that runs $400 a night, captioned, "Self-care isn't selfish." I'd liked the photo. I double-tapped it with the same thumb that had just approved a Zelle transfer, so her father could afford medication while she soaked in a mineral pool. $47,200. I said it out loud. The number sat in the dark room like a third person, Cole half under the comforter. How much? $47,200. He sat up. 47,000. 14 months of Ruthie's daycare. Or the down payment on the storefront I've been looking at for the firm. My voice stayed flat. The number was doing the work. $47,200 was more than 2 full years of the car payments on our Subaru. It was the kitchen renovation I'd been planning for our own house, the one I kept pushing back because we were tight. It was the expansion fund my design firm desperately needed, the one that would let me hire a third junior designer and stop working 60-hour weeks. Every hour I'd spent at the drafting table instead of with Ruthie every Saturday date night, Cole and I had skipped every time I'd told him maybe next month. Those sacrifices had a number now, and the number was $60 million Lambai. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Group chat. Cindy, 1147 p.m. Mom, can you ask Leah for another $600 for the catering deposit? Tell her it's for the gutter repair, lol. Lol. I showed Cole the screen. He read it, put his head back on the pillow, and stared at the ceiling. What are you going to do? He asked. I don't know yet, but I was starting to. The next day at my studio, I couldn't focus on the Hendersons' kitchen. I kept pulling up the spreadsheet on my second monitor, scrolling through 2 years of my own generosity, rendered in columns and rows. At 11, I called Cole on his job site. I could hear the nail gun popping in the background, someone's radio playing country music, the controlled chaos of a house being built. I've been thinking about what to do, I said. Talk to me. If I confront them, Cindy will cry. She'll do the thing where her voice goes high and shaky and she says, I can't believe you'd accuse me of something like that. Mom will say I'm being dramatic, that I'm making something out of nothing, that families help each other. Dad will leave the room. I'll end up apologizing for bringing it up, and by January, Cindy will be asking for money again. Nothing changes. Probably. If I just cut them off quietly, no explanation, Cindy will figure out another angle. She always does. She'll go through Cole's mom, or she'll show up at my studio, or she'll send Dad to do the asking because she knows I can't say no to him. And I'll spend Christmas sitting in our living room being angry while they scramble. What's door number 3? I looked out the studio window at the Nashville skyline. December gray, a crane moving slowly over a construction site on Broadway. My studio was on the second floor of a shared workspace in East Nashville. A shared workspace with exposed brick and a communal espresso machine, and other small businesses run by people who worked too much for too little. I loved it here. I'd built it from nothing, and every dollar I'd sent to my family was a dollar I hadn't invested in this. I want them to feel what I feel. Excluded. Looking in from the outside at something they can't have. Cole was quiet for a beat. Then your sister's spending your money on a party you're not invited to. That's not family, Leah. That's a subscription service. And you just canceled. I want to throw my own Christmas. A real one. Somewhere they'll see it and know exactly what they threw away. Then do it. I spent the next 2 days planning. Something in me had shifted the way a compass needle swings and then steadies, and the direction it pointed was forward. I designed the party the way I designed a client's living room mood board first, then floor plan, then execution timeline. Warm neutrals and evergreen. Candles, not string lights. Linen, not plastic. Food that meant something, cooked by hands that cared. A guest list built on one criterion: people who showed up when it counted, not people who showed up when they needed a check. On December 14th, I took 3 actions before lunch. I called my bank and canceled the $600 monthly auto transfer I'd set up as a standing emergency fund for my parents. The bank representative asked if I wanted to redirect the funds. Yes, I said. Back to my business account. I blocked Cindy's number, though I kept the group chat open, read-only, my invisible window into their unraveling. And I opened a Pinterest board titled Christmas at the Villa and started populating it with images. Long tables, mismatched china, food served family style, the kind of Christmas that looked like someone's grandmother hosted it. That afternoon, I called my friend Keisha, who ran a catering company in East Nashville. She had availability Christmas week. When I told her the budget and the guest count, she whistled low and said, "Girl, you sure?" I told her the abbreviated version. She said, "Say no more. I'll build you a menu, and I'm coming as a guest." I mentioned the number, $47,200, and heard her go quiet. "Leah, that's a down payment on a house." "I know. I did the math." Then I called Mom. She picked up on the second ring, her voice already in the middle of something, the TV on in the background, the sound of water running. "Leah, honey, I was actually going to call you. The gutters need—" "I can't help with that right now, Mom. I'm really stretched." Silence. 3 seconds. 4. 5. The longest I'd ever let a silence with my mother go unfilled. I could hear her breathing the slow inhale she used when she was recalculating. "Oh," she said. "Well, okay. I'll figure it out." "Okay. Love you, Mom." "Love you too, honey." I hung up, and my hands shook. My whole body, actually, a fine tremor from my wrists to my shoulders, the way you shake after you almost get in a car accident and the adrenaline hits 30 seconds too late. I'd said no to my mother for the first time in my adult life, and my nervous system was treating it like a near-death experience. I sat at my desk and pressed my palms flat against the wood and counted to 60, and by the time I got there, the shaking had mostly stopped, and something else had taken its place. Something quiet and solid, like a wall going up inside me, brick by brick. I'd done it, and I was still alive. Cole drove me out to the villa on December 16th. His client, a country music producer, whose bathroom remodel had gone $12,000 over budget and 3 weeks long. Cole had fixed a tile disaster left by the previous contractor, owned a hillside property 20 minutes outside Nashville that sat empty from Thanksgiving through February. The producer and his wife wintered in Cabo. The house just sat there, $2 million of stone and cedar in silence, surrounded by trees. Cole had made the call the night before. "He owes me for the bathroom," he said. "I saved his marriage with that subway tile. 3 nights, $4,800. That's the friend rate." We pulled up the gravel drive and I stepped out of the truck, and the air smelled like cold pine and the last of someone's wood smoke from down the valley. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the Cumberland River Valley, where the hills rolled away in layers of gray and brown. Inside, a professional kitchen with a 6-burner range and a hood vent that could handle industrial-level cooking. A 12-seat dining table made from reclaimed walnut, the grain still visible under 3 coats of lacquer. The kind of table I would have designed for a client and charged $4,000 for. A wraparound deck with 2 stone fire pits and a view that went on until it hit the tree line and the sky. I walked through the kitchen, running my hand along the counter, and I could already see it. The designer in me was already working table set for 30 grandma's food in the center candles at varying heights. The recipe binder propped open on the island, flour dusted, a working kitchen, not a display. I'd brought the binder with me. I opened it on the marble counter and turned the pages. Grandma Mercer's handwriting, blue ink, slightly shaky in the later recipes where her arthritis had gotten worse. Brown sugar ham with apple cider glaze, cornbread dressing with sage and onion. The recipe that took up 2 pages because Grandma kept adding notes. Bourbon pecan pie, the one with the hand-drawn arrow pointing to more bourbon in capital letters. Cranberry relish with orange zest, the one she'd make in the big glass bowl and let sit overnight in the fridge so the flavors married. Cindy had never cooked a single one of these recipes. She'd never asked for the binder. She'd taken the china because china looked good in a cabinet, because you could post a photo of a china display with the right lighting and the right filter, and people would comment gorgeous without ever tasting anything that came off. Those plates. I'd taken the binder because I was the one who stood in Grandma's kitchen at 13, writing down measurements while she cooked by feel. A handful of this, a good pour of that. I'd translated her instincts into tablespoons and cups, and she'd laughed and patted my cheek and said I was the only one in the family who paid attention. On the drive home, Cole took the back roads through the hills, and I checked the group chat. The messages had picked up urgency. Cindy, the $600 hasn't come through yet. Mom, did you ask Mom? She said she's stretched right now. Cindy stretched. She makes 6 figures. She's so selfish. Whatever, I'll figure it out. Selfish. I put the phone down and looked out the window at the passing hills, brown and bare in the December light, the kind of landscape that looks stripped down to its bones. My sister was calling me selfish for declining to fund my own exclusion, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice agreed with her. That voice had my mother's cadence. It said things like family helps family and you have more than they do and it won't kill you to be generous. I'd been listening to that voice for 29 years and it had cost me $47,200 and it was still whispering. Over the next 3 days, the plan took shape. Keisha and I sat at her prep station for 2 hours, going through Grandma's binder page by page, and every recipe was a decision. The brown sugar ham was non-negotiable. The centerpiece, the dish Grandma had made every Christmas since 1974. The cornbread dressing was mine to cook, because nobody else understood the ratio of sage to onion the way you had to let the onions go past translucent to the faintest gold before adding the celery. But the bourbon pecan pie was where I stopped. Grandma had always made 2, one for the table and one for Frank to eat in the garage when he thinks nobody's watching. Dad loved that pie. The arrow pointing to more bourbon in Grandma's handwriting was there because Dad had once said the original recipe was too polite. I stared at the page for a long time. Then I told Keisha to make 3. 3 pies, 1 for here, 2 for the freezer. My father hasn't had this pie in 4 years. She didn't ask why. She just wrote it down. Cole handled logistics the way he handled a renovation timeline, color-coded, sequential, every task assigned and deadlined. He borrowed folding tables from Tommy's church and a case of tea lights from the dollar store. He called his cousin Becca in Murfreesboro and said Christmas at a villa, bring the kids Leah's cooking. Becca said I'll bring my 7-layer dip and my husband in that order of importance. Cole's crew volunteered before he asked set up breakdown firewood, the sound system. I reached out to 3 clients who'd become friends over the years. The guest list grew from 20 to 28. Every name on it was someone who showed up, someone who didn't keep a ledger. Then December 19th, the first counterattack came. Mom called at 7 in the evening right when I was bathing Ruthie. I let it go to voicemail. She called back. I answered with wet hands and a squirming toddler on my hip. Honey, Cindy's really hurt that you can't help with Christmas this year. You know how much this means to her. She's been planning for months. I wasn't invited, Mom. A pause. What do you mean? Of course you're invited. Cindy told you I was spending Christmas with Cole's family. That's not true. She never asked me. She told you that so I wouldn't be there. Longer pause. The sound of Lorraine rearranging her story in real time, searching for the version that kept everything smooth. Well, I think there was a miscommunication. You know how your sister gets. She probably just assumed, what's the Christmas budget, Mom? What, the Christmas budget? How much is Cindy planning to spend? Because I've been sending money for furnaces and dental work and gutters and water heaters for 2 years, and I'm starting to wonder where it all went. Leah. Don't start this. Your sister does her best. She has expenses. The real estate market has been, did the furnace actually break? Silence. The kind of silence that weighs more than words. Ruthie splashed in the bath and laughed, and the sound was so normal, so clean, that it made the silence on the phone feel like something from another planet. You've always been jealous of Cindy, Lorraine said quietly. Even as a girl. I hung up. The phone was wet and slippery, and I nearly dropped it, and Ruthie grabbed for it because she grabs for everything, and I held it out of her reach, and stood there in the bathroom with the steam and the baby shampoo, and the realization that I had just hung up on my mother for the first time in my life. She called back. I didn't answer. 3 missed calls. Then a text from Cindy's number. She must have called from Mom's phone since I had her blocked. Real mature Leah. Mom is crying. Happy now, I was not happy. I was standing in a bathroom holding a naked toddler who was trying to eat a rubber duck, and my hands were shaking again, and I was the furthest thing from happy I had been in months. But I was also done in a way I hadn't been done before. Done in the bones. Done in the quiet place behind my ribs where I'd kept all the excuses and the justifications and the "she's still your mother" and the family helps. Family. That place was empty now. Swept clean. The next few days became something I hadn't expected productive. Maybe the most productive week of my life. The energy I'd spent for years managing my family's invented emergencies, anticipating their needs, crafting the right text with the right amount of money and the right number of exclamation points, all of that was suddenly available for something else. I redesigned the villa party 3 times in 2 days, each version better than the last. I finished the Henderson's kitchen plans and sent them the proposal. I called a vendor I'd been putting off for weeks. I picked up Ruthie from daycare on time for the first time in a month. Keisha and I met at her commercial kitchen on the 18th to finalize the menu. She'd printed Grandma's recipes from photos I'd sent and taped them to the wall above her prep station. "Your grandmother knew what she was doing," she said, studying the cornbread dressing notes. "This is basically a restaurant recipe. The ratios are perfect. We decided she'd handle everything except the ham and the cornbread, which I'd cook myself. Those 2 are yours," Keisha said. "Nobody else touches those." Cole's crew pitched in without being asked. His foreman, a guy named Tommy, who stood about 5 to 5 and could carry a sheet of drywall up a flight of stairs one-handed, showed up at the villa on the 20th, with folding tables borrowed from his church and a case of tea, lights from the dollar store. "Cole said something about Christmas," he said, shrugging. "We got you." His wife Maria volunteered to handle the drink station. 2 of the other guys' wives offered to bring desserts. The party was building itself, fueled by the uncomplicated generosity of people who give because they want to, not because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. I designed centerpieces from cedar branches and white candles and glass jars, arrangements that cost almost nothing but looked like they cost everything because that's what I do for a living, and this for the first time was a project where the client and the designer were the same person. Cole came in from the deck, where he'd been stacking firewood, and found me arranging cedar sprigs in mason jars on the dining table. 34 jars in a row, each one slightly different. "You're sorting them by height," he said. "They look better graduated." Tallest in the center, tapering out. He picked one up and turned it in his hand. "These are the jars from the recycling bin. Pickle jars. Pasta sauce." The tall one was olives. I took it back and set it in its place. Every table I've ever designed for a client started with something expensive: Italian marble, hand-blown glass, custom ceramics from a studio in Germantown. This is the first table I've designed from things I already had. He leaned against the doorframe and watched me work. "It's the best one." "You're biased." "Doesn't make me wrong." On the 21st, the midpoint of a week that felt like a month, I stood on the villa's deck and looked at the valley, and the tables set up in the great room, and the kitchen stocked with ingredients, and the guest list taped to a refrigerator with 31 names on it, and the feeling that washed over me was close to triumph. Cindy's Christmas was collapsing. Mine was taking shape. I was winning, but the feeling had a sour edge, like biting into something beautiful that's turned. I was standing in a $2 million house, designing a party that was, at its core, a message to 3 people who wouldn't be there. Every centerpiece was a sentence. Every plate was a word. The entire event was a letter written in food and candles, and Instagram captions addressed to Cindy and Lorraine and Frank, and the letter said, "Look what you're missing." I pushed the feeling down. I had too much to do. That same night, the group chat showed the panic building. "Cindy, Mom, can you pull from the emergency savings, Frank?" "We don't have an emergency savings, Cynthia." "Cindy, what about the credit card, Lorraine?" "The Visa is almost maxed." "Cindy, then, what?" "Mom, we have nothing. We can't just not have Christmas." Frank typing for only the second time in the entire chat, "We don't have $8,400, Cynthia." I read that exchange sitting in my studio at midnight, the spreadsheet still open on my other monitor, and the satisfaction was thinner than it should have been. Bright from a distance, like watching a fire through glass, warmth visible, but not reaching my skin. 3 days before Christmas, Cindy found out about the villa. I should have expected it. Nashville is a big, small town, 2 million people connected by 6 degrees of barbecue and real estate. One of my clients, Sandra, had mentioned the villa to her hairdresser while getting a blowout on West End. The hairdresser mentioned it to her next client, a woman named Diane, who sold houses in the same brokerage as Cindy. Diane mentioned it to Cindy over coffee in the break room, probably innocently, probably just making conversation. Your sister's throwing some kind of Christmas party at the Whitfield place on Old Hickory, right? I heard it's going to be gorgeous. I could picture Cindy's face receiving that information, the smile freezing, the eyes going hard and flat behind it, the coffee cup pausing halfway to her mouth. She called me from a number I didn't recognize, and I picked up thinking it was a vendor. "You're throwing a party." Her voice was pure disbelief. Pitched high, the same register she used when she was 14, and I accidentally wore her shirt to school. "While your family has nothing for Christmas, who are you? The same person who paid for the last 2 years of your Christmases, Cindy." That's... Mom and Dad needed that money. Did the furnace break silence? The kind that confirms everything without saying a word. "You are so petty," she said, and her voice went low and cold and controlled the voice underneath the performance, the one that lived behind the Instagram filters. "You're punishing Mom and Dad because you're jealous of me. You always have been." She hung up. Within an hour, the group chat detonated. "Cindy to Lorraine and Frank Leah is throwing a huge party at some mansion and deliberately leaving us out. She's using Grandma's recipes to humiliate us. She's posting it all on social media. She's trying to make us look bad." The escalation came in tiers, each one calculated. Tier 1 was guilt, Cindy texted from an unknown number. "Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad is just sitting in his chair staring at the wall. This is what you wanted." Tier 2 was recruitment. She called Cole directly, something she'd never done in 3 years of marriage, and left a voicemail that started, "Sweet Cole, honey, I just want to talk," and ended sharp, "Tell your wife her. Family is falling apart because of her ego." Cole played the voicemail for me without commentary, his face a blank wall, and deleted it. Tier 3 was public. Cindy posted an Instagram story, no context, just a black screen with white text that read, "When your own blood turns their back on you at Christmas," with a broken heart emoji. 14 people commented with hearts and hugs. 3 of them were on my guest list. I watched the comments roll in, and my stomach turned, not from guilt, but from the craftsmanship of it, the efficiency. She'd weaponized sympathy in under 40 characters. Then Lorraine called. This time my mother didn't lead with honey. Her voice had an edge I'd only heard twice before, both times directed at cashiers who'd given her the wrong change. "Your grandmother would be ashamed of you, Leah. Spending money on strangers instead of your own family." My hands, my stupid traitorous hands, shaking again. Grandma was sacred. Grandma was the only person in the Mercer family who had ever made me feel chosen without a price tag attached, and my mother was using her name like a crowbar. "Mom, she taught you better than this. She taught all of us better than this. She taught me to set a table for anyone who needed a seat, Mom. That's exactly what I'm doing." Lorraine hung up. My ear rang from the silence. I sat in my studio with the door closed and my hands pressed flat against the desk to stop the shaking. The Hendersons' kitchen plans were still on my screen. White oak cabinets, brass hardware, a life where kitchens were just rooms, not battlefields. That night, Ruthie woke at 2 with a fever. Low grade, probably teething, but her cheeks were flushed and she fussed in my arms, and I walked the nursery floor in the dark while Cole slept. The baby monitor sat on the dresser, its green eye watching. Grandma would be ashamed. My mother's words circled and I couldn't swat them away. Was she right? Grandma Mercer had loved the whole family. She loved Cindy even when Cindy was at her most theatrical. She loved Frank even though he never said anything worth hearing. She loved Lorraine even though Lorraine had never once stood up to anyone about anything. Grandma would have set a table for everyone. She wouldn't have drawn lines. She would have cooked twice as much food and added chairs, and said the more the merrier, and meant it because she'd grown up during a time when a big table was a moral achievement. Through the baby monitor, I heard Cole's voice. He was in the kitchen on the phone, keeping his voice low, but the monitor picked it up tinny and delayed. Yeah, she needs a vegetarian option for at least 3 people. And the cornbread, she's making the cornbread herself, so just plan around that. His voice through the monitor and his voice through the wall arrived at slightly different times, the same words a half beat apart. 2 versions of the same sentence. 2 versions. I stopped walking. Ruthie snuffled against my shoulder, her fever-hot cheek pressed to my collarbone. That was it. 2 versions of everything. What my family said to my face, and what they said in the group chat. What they told each other about me and what they told me about themselves. The furnace that never broke. The dental work that may or may not have happened. The water heater that was fine. My entire relationship with the Mercer family had been a conversation held in 2 rooms, and I'd only ever been allowed in one. And now I was doing the same thing, building a beautiful Christmas to make them feel ugly, curating joy as a weapon, designing a perfect spread for Instagram, not for people. How was I different from Cindy, who designed a perfect Christmas for Instagram while her sister paid the bill? I sank into the rocking chair. Ruthie was calming her fever-warm body heavy against my chest. The monitor pulsed green. The house was silent except for Cole's murmured phone conversation and the distant hum of the furnace. Our furnace, the one that actually worked, the one we'd paid for ourselves. A memory surfaced sharp and specific the way they are at 3 in the morning when your defenses are down. I was 12. Cindy's homecoming was a month away and she needed a dress. Mom drove her to 3 different stores over 2 weekends until she found one at a boutique in Green Hills, $340. A week later, I asked for new art supplies, colored pencils and a sketch pad, maybe $40 total. Mom had looked at me with that specific brand of patience that meant the conversation was already over. We can't do everything for everyone, Leah. $340 for Cindy's dress. $40 denied for my pencils. And Cindy had worn the dress to homecoming, and I'd bought my own colored pencils with babysitting money from the Hendersons down the street. Different Hendersons, same neighborhood, and no one had ever mentioned it again. Except the number stayed. The exact price of the dress, $340. The store on Green Hills. The fabric blue satin with thin straps. The receipt from the art supply store had stayed in my desk drawer for 2 years as if I might someday present it as evidence to a jury that would never convene. But there was a next part. Grandma Mercer had called that Saturday. She'd heard from someone, maybe Dad. Maybe she'd just sensed it through whatever mysterious frequency grandmothers transmit on. And she'd driven 40 minutes from her house to ours to pick me up and take me to the art supply store on Gallatin Road. She'd handed me 3 20s from her wallet. Get what you need, baby girl, and get yourself something nice too. I'd bought the good colored pencils, the Prismacolor ones, with the soft leads and a hardbound sketchbook with thick pages, and she'd watched me choose them the way you watch someone open a present, and on the drive home you're going to make something beautiful with those. You always do. She had seen me, chosen me, every single time, without conditions, or invoices, or exclamation points. The party wasn't revenge. Or it had started as revenge and maybe some of that was still in there and maybe that was okay because anger is allowed even when it's inconvenient. But it didn't have to stay revenge. It could be something else. Grandma's Christmas was never about performance. It was about the table being big enough. It was about the cornbread and the ham and the door that stayed open and the fact that if you showed up, you got a plate. I didn't need to punish my family. And I didn't need their permission to have a Christmas worth remembering. Ruthie's fever broke around 4. She settled into the crib with a sigh that sounded older than 14 months, and I covered her with the crocheted blanket Cole's mom had made, the one with the uneven edges that Jan had apologized for 3 times, and that was the softest thing in the nursery. The monitor's green light was steady. Christmas Eve morning, I drove out to the villa early and sat at the kitchen island with my laptop and the guest list. I made changes. I added Cole's mom, Jan, who spent every Christmas alone since the divorce 7 years ago, and who always said, "Oh, I like the quiet," in a voice that said the opposite. I added our neighbor, Deb, a single mom whose 2 kids were at their father's place in Memphis this year, which meant Deb was spending December 25th in an empty house watching Hallmark movies. I added my 2 junior designers, Priya and Sam. neither of whom had family in Tennessee. Priya's parents were in Minnesota, Sam's were in Oregon, and neither could afford the flights. And I added a client, Wanda Griggs, 71 years old, whose husband had died in March, and who'd told me during our last design consultation, her voice casual and her hands shaking, that she was not particularly looking forward to the holidays this year. The list grew to 34. I opened the group chat one last time. Cindy's posts had taken on a frantic quality. "Mom, what are we going to do? Can Dad borrow from Uncle Pete? What about returning the decorations?" And then Frank speaking for only the third time in the entire thread in the blunt language of a man who had spent 40 years managing inventory. "We don't have $8,400, Cynthia. We never did." I typed one message, 7 words. "Merry Christmas. I hope you enjoy the holiday." No edge, no explanation. No bait. I sent it and closed the app. Cindy responded within 90 seconds, a paragraph of fury I didn't read. Lorraine sent a sad face emoji. Frank didn't respond. I closed my laptop and started prepping the brine for the ham. Christmas morning at the villa, I was in the kitchen by 6:30. The ham went in first, the brown sugar and apple cider glaze painted on with a brush Grandma had used for 30 years, the bristles stiff and golden with decades of caramelized sugar. The cornbread dressing came next, sage and onion and celery sautéed in butter, until the kitchen smelled like every December of my childhood that had been good, and there had been good ones. That was the thing nobody tells you about. Complicated families. There are good memories laced through the bad. Ones like gold thread in a torn fabric, and the gold makes the tearing worse. 20 minutes south, according to the group chat's last flurry of messages from the night before Cindy's Christmas plans had cratered completely. The caterer she'd tried to book last minute had required a deposit she couldn't cover. The decorations she'd bought on credit were still in bags in the garage because nobody was coming to see them. Uncle Pete had said no to the loan. The $8,400 Christmas had shrunk to whatever was already in the pantry, and based on Cindy's lifestyle, the pantry was probably a box of crackers and a bottle of Prosecco left over from a showing. I had no way to know exactly what their morning looked like, but the silence in the group chat since midnight told its own story. No Merry Christmas messages, no photos of a tree, no thumbs-up emoji from Dad. Just nothing, the digital equivalent of an empty table. I turned the ham in the oven and basted it again, and the glaze bubbled and hissed, and the kitchen windows fogged from the heat, and through the steam I could see the valley below frost still on the fields, the kind of morning that looks like it was designed to be seen from this exact window. Keisha arrived at 10 with her team. 3 women, efficient, silent, in the way of professionals who don't need to talk to work. They transformed the villa's dining room. Long tables draped in cream linen, mismatched plates I'd collected from 3 different thrift stores on Nolensville Pike, mason jars with cedar sprigs and tea lights, the recipe binder, propped open on the kitchen island, where anyone could see. People started arriving at noon. Tommy and Maria pulled up first in their F-153 kids spilling out of the back seat before the truck fully stopped. The youngest one, a 4-year-old named Diego, already holding a pine cone he'd found in the 51 driveway, and announcing to no one in particular that it was a Greenid. The rest of Cole's crew followed within 15 minutes, 4 men and their wives, and a combined 7 kids under 10, and within 20 minutes, the deck was a chaos of small boots and thrown snowballs, and one memorable incident, involving Diego's pine cone grenade and someone's coffee. Jan arrived next, carrying a Pyrex dish of deviled eggs. She'd stayed up until midnight, making wearing the nice sweater she only wore on occasions when she wanted to seem like she didn't care, and when she walked in and saw the clear 9 table and the food and the fire already going in the pit, her chin trembled and she said, "Oh, Leah." And I said, "I'm glad you're here," and we didn't need to say more. Wanda came at 1. She stood in the doorway for a moment, her coat still on, looking at the room full of people she didn't know, and I crossed to her and took her coat and brought her a glass of wine and introduced her to Jan, and within 10 minutes, they were deep in a conversation about their husbands, Jan's ex, Wanda's late, and the quiet of a house that used to have someone else in it. 34 people. The villa held them all. Music from a Bluetooth speaker, then Cole's buddy Ray produced a guitar, then someone else produced a mandolin, because Nashville, Because you can't gather more than 8 people in this city without someone bringing a stringed instrument. By 2 in the afternoon, there was a 3-person jam session on the deck, and a kid had spilled cranberry juice on the reclaimed walnut table, and Sam from my office was on his hands and knees cleaning it up while apologizing to the table like it was a person, and everybody laughed, and the sound of 34 people laughing in a house built for silence was something I hadn't known I needed. I moved through the rooms, and the feeling was close to joy but larger, quieter. My hands were steady, my chest was open, a feeling like stepping outside after being in a room with low ceilings for a long time. I served Grandma's cranberry relish to Deb, my neighbor, and she tasted it and looked up at me and said, "This is exactly like my grandmother used to make." And I said, "It is, isn't it?" And we stood there for a moment, 2 women in a kitchen holding a flavor that belonged to someone else's hands. I stepped out onto the deck alone. The valley was going blue with early winter dusk, that deep Tennessee blue that only happens in late December when the light drains from the hills in slow stages as if the sun is leaving reluctantly. Smoke drifted up from the fire pit. I was holding a plate I'd been carrying for an hour serving everyone else, and I hadn't eaten from it. I took a bite of the ham. It tasted like Grandma's kitchen on Antioch Pike. Like the one room in the world where I had never been asked to earn my seat, where my name was written in the margins of the recipes, where a handful of this and a good pour of that was a language only I had learned. My eyes stung. I took another bite. Inside, the guitar shifted to something old and slow, a hymn my grandmother used to hum while she washed dishes, and someone was singing along off-key and earnest and completely unself-conscious. And from the living room came Ruthie's laugh, that full-body, full-volume toddler laugh. That sounds like a person discovering for the first time that joy is a thing that exists in the world, and it's available to everyone. I went back inside. Cole stood up. He's 6'2" and quiet, and when he stands in a room full of seated people, the room notices. He tapped his glass with a fork. The guitar stopped. The conversations dropped to murmurs. "I'm not much for speeches," he said. "But my wife spent 2 weeks making sure every person in this room had somewhere to be on Christmas." He looked at me. "Because she knows what it feels like when you don't." He sat down. 22 words. The room went still for 3 seconds, and then Jan Cole's mother raised her glass of sweet tea, and then Wanda raised hers, and then everyone did, and I pressed my thumbnail hard into my palm because that was the only way to keep standing and keep my face together. After the toast, I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched Wanda Griggs, 71 years old and 8 months widowed, talking to Priya, my 26-year-old junior designer from Minnesota. They had absolutely nothing in common except that both of them were spending Christmas far from the people they'd expected to be with, and they were laughing about something, and Wanda had her hand on Priya's arm, the way grandmothers touch people they've just adopted. This was what Grandma would have done. She would have opened the door and let the room fill with whoever needed filling. She wouldn't have kept a guest list or a budget or an Instagram strategy. She would have made more cornbread and pulled up another chair and said, "There's always room." And she would have invited Cindy and Lorraine and Frank. That truth sat in me like a stone, and I let it sit. Grandma was better than me. Maybe that was okay. Maybe being a little worse than your grandmother in the specific way of refusing to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm was a form of growth she would have understood even if she wouldn't have chosen it. After the moment had passed and the conversations resumed and the guitar started up again, I took one photo. The table. Grandma's food in the center, the ham glazed and glistening, the cornbread in the cast-iron skillet, the pecan pie cooling by the window, with one slice already cut. 34 place settings, mismatched plates, and jam jar candles, and the cedar sprigs already shedding needles on the cream linen. The recipe binder propped open on the kitchen island flour dusted a streak of batter across the cranberry relish page where Ruthie had grabbed for it earlier and I'd let her. I posted it to Instagram. Caption: Grandma Mercer's Christmas. The way she made it. No tag, no location pin, no commentary. One photo, one sentence. 7 words. The photo got 42 likes in the first hour. One of them was from Cindy's on-again, off-again boyfriend Marcus, who I'd met exactly once at a barbecue where he'd spent the entire afternoon on his phone. His like arrived at 4:17 p.m. Cindy's comment arrived at 4:23, then disappeared, deleted within a minute. But I'd seen it. Must be nice to have the money for all that. She deleted it because even Cindy could see how it would look. The sister who funded the family complaining about the sister who stopped. The internet was watching, and Cindy's instinct for optics, her one genuine skill, had kicked in just fast enough. At 7 that evening, I was in the villa kitchen washing dishes. Most of the guests had gone. Cole was outside with Ruthie and Ray's kids, the deck lights on the fire pit crackling low. The kitchen smelled like cold grease and pecan sugar and coffee, and the last traces of 34 people's collective warmth. My phone rang on the counter. I dried my hands on the towel hanging from the oven door and looked at the screen. Dad, my father, who communicated in thumbs-up emojis and grunts, who hadn't called me unprompted since I was in college and needed a ride home from a flu, was calling me on Christmas Day. I picked up. There's no food, Leah. 5 words. No manipulation, no angle, no performance, no your sister says or your mother thinks. Just a 61-year-old retired auto parts manager standing in a house where his oldest daughter's Instagram Christmas had collapsed into an empty table and bare counters because the money had stopped. I could hear the house behind him, that heavy quiet of a home where everyone is present, but no one is speaking, a quiet heavier than shouting. I gripped the edge of the counter. The water was still running. Through the window over the sink, Cole was on the lawn teaching Ruthie to throw the foam ball, and she kept throwing it straight down at her own feet and laughing, and the deck lights caught the frost on the grass. $47,200, Dad. In 2 years. And you're calling me because there's no food. He was quiet. I knew, he said. Most of it. I should have said something. Yeah, Dad. You should have. I hung up. My hands were steady. I turned off the faucet, dried the last pot, and put it in the cabinet. I didn't send food. My hand moved toward the keys on the counter, muscle memory, older than language, the involuntary reach of a woman who has spent her whole life driving to the rescue. But I stopped. Through the window, Cole was carrying Ruthie on his shoulders across the frosted lawn, her mittened hands gripping his hair, both of them laughing at something I couldn't hear. I went back to my guests. Later, after everyone had left, Cole and I cleaned the villa in comfortable silence. He dried the walnut table with a cloth, working along the grain, the way he treated every piece of wood with respect. You good? I don't know yet. I leaned against the counter and looked at the kitchen, the aftermath of something that had mattered. But I'm getting there. 3 weeks later, Lorraine called. January 15th. Ruthie was asleep, the baby monitor on the nightstand green light pulsing the same position it had occupied the night this all started. But I was different. I was reading in bed, not scrolling in the dark. I saw the pictures from your party, she said. No preamble. No filler. You looked happy, Leah. You looked like you didn't need us at all. Her voice cracked. That scared me more than anything your sister ever said to me. I let the silence sit. Didn't fill it. Didn't rush to comfort her. I don't know how to be the mother you needed, she said. Your sister fills the room. She's been filling it since she was 3, and you were always so steady. I told myself you were fine because you never complained. But you weren't fine, were you? No, Mom. I wasn't. The pictures of the food. Those were your grandmother's recipes. She was crying now, the real kind. She always said you were the one who paid attention. Leah's the one, Lorraine. She's the one who'll keep it going. I love you, Mom. But I'm not going to keep paying to be part of this family. If you want a relationship with me and Ruthie, it starts with you showing up, without Cindy managing it, without a bill attached. A long pause. I don't know if I can do that. I know, but I'm here if you figure it out. We hung up. It wasn't an apology. She'd said I see you now and it scares me, which was honest but not enough. A crack in a wall, not a door. The recipe binder is on my kitchen counter now, not the villa's kitchen. Mine. The pages are soft from use, and Grandma's blue ink has bled slightly where batter or water reached it over the years. A faint smear across her handwriting that makes the letters look like they're drifting, like the words are in motion even on the page. I open it most Sundays. Sometimes I cook from it. Sometimes I just read her notes in the margins, the ones that say things like, Frank likes this with extra onion, and the girls always fight over the last piece, and Leah says, add a pinch more salt. She wrote my name in the margins of her recipes. She wrote me into the record of the things worth keeping. Ruthie is in her high chair, banging a wooden spoon against the tray with the seriousness of a percussionist. I'm making Grandma's cornbread not for a party, not to prove anything, not for a photo. The binder is propped open against the toaster, and there's a smear of batter across the page. Fresh mine, layered over Grandma's old smear, like a conversation held across years between two pairs of hands that loved the same. Kitchen.